An empty wagon. The striped blanket heaved like breath. Rafe pulled it back, froze. His ranch's brand on her skin. From then, the colt changed hands. The ledger carried Kincaid's name. The boy was trapped under the gate, and a man chose to walk in and give himself up. Would you dare to stay till the end? I heard the wheels grind over gravel before I saw the wagon. The horse stood still, neck thin, dry foam crusted along the bit. The bed was empty, no driver, only a striped blanket laid over the straw inside, heaving like some animal breathing beneath it. Wind tugged the fringe at its edge, threading through coarse wool, rattling like old grass. The yard was mute. The tack shed stood ajar. The smell of old horse sweat and oiled hide leaked out of the dark. A bucket tipped on its side by the well. Water seeped drop by drop through the crack, falling into dust puddles as scattered black notes. A black-winged magpie perched on the fence post, tilting its head with us. Rafe Kincaid stepped off the porch, no hat in hand. He walked straight to the wagon's tail. Slow steps, boot heels pressing gravel flat. His right hand cupped as old habit, holding a gun at the back, though no gun today. His shirt dark with sweat at the shoulders. I stood aside, hand gripping the well's stone rim, watching his shadow stretch onto the wagon bed. Broad shoulders, burned nape, the fold at his collar. "I'm filthy," the voice under the blanket said. "Filthy outside in, inside out." Rafe stopped half a step short. I peered past the blanket's edge. Only tangled hair and a narrow shoulder. The striped blanket slipped aside, showing a bruised arm. Rope burns spreading around the wrist. Her fingers dug the plank, nails black with dirt, broken edges rough as shell. Rafe reached his hand. He said nothing. His fingers pinched the blanket's edge, pulling it back. No sharp motion. Only the way he drew breath, like fearing to tear what was already torn. The blanket slid past her shoulder, fell slow, trailing the stale sweat and fine sand trapped in wool. The brand showed on her left hip. Two burned rails crossing into a warped circle, with short strokes like cut lashes. The blind bull. This ranch's mark. Fire had eaten into the softest flesh, leaving edges puffed like burnt bread crust. Around it, skin flared the ash purple of ruin. Rafe stood fixed, hand still on the blanket's hem, eyes slow. He did not look away from the brand. Wind drove grit into my eyes. I blinked, saw the old sweat line crossing her cheek, dried in the crease of her nose. Her neck bare, streaked in cuts. Her hair clotted into stringy ropes, snarled like guts. Some point behind us, level with the dirt, like one hearing steps from afar. The tack room door clapped. Jonas Vega leaned in the rim of shade, one foot on the step, shoulder bent. He spat tobacco pulp to the floor. The thud on dry ground, sharp as beans dropped in a pan. Hat brim low, eyes dark. Jonas looked past us to the brand on her hip. No brow raised, no question. In shadow, the dagger at his side flashed a thin, cold line, then dulled. I lifted the bucket at the well, set it upright, turned the crank, heard rope rasp wood. Water frothed, cloudy, white at the lip. I set it near the tack room steps. The ash soap sat on the shelf by the door, square, gray, edges chipped. Its lie stung like fresh lightning. Beside it, a pouch of nails, a bent safety pin with half its head gone. I took both, held them out. Her hand did not reach. "Soap," she said, stone dry. "A pin." Rafe twitched his chin toward the shelf. I placed the soap at her feet. She did not look. Jonas stepped half into light, hand at his belt, drawing a small knife. One edge dulled. He gave it to her, careless as handing a stick. "A pin won't hold what's torn," Jonas said. His voice no reproach, no comfort, only air passing, cold as well water. She took the knife between two fingers. No thanks, no sorry. She knelt at the wagon's side, slid the blade into her hem, cutting thread. The cotton fibers snapped, brittle, long. She pulled out a strip of foul cloth, wound it tight round the wrist's cut groove, tied it with teeth. She used the knife's tip to pry a splinter under her thumbnail, silent as plucking thorn from a horse's mouth. The sliver popped, red at its end. Rafe lifted the striped blanket, not to cover, but folded it in half, laid it on the step. The wool shrank in the sun, its sour cheapness rising. He sat on the low step, clenched his hand, opened it, staring at his palm as if searching a mark. Old black pits of coal oil still lodged in the veins, from times branding iron burned. I saw him blink, slow, his lips pressed, then eased. "Drink," I said. She shook her head. Her eyes stayed on the knife. The shake not sharp. It was light, like brushing dust off another's shoulder. Wind slammed the door against the wall. The horse startled. Jonas laid a hand on its mane, stroked once. I heard it through the lie-tang, short cut. She wiped her hands on her hem, foam cracking, leaving pale streaks like dry salt. "Clothes," she said, "if there are." Rafe understood. He rose, went into the shed. The hinges moaned underhand. He searched the wooden chest. An old cotton shirt, a strip of soft leather cracked at the middle, a crumpled handkerchief, corner-stitched with a faint K. He did not look at the letter. He brought them out, laid each on the folded blanket. She did not touch at once. She sat on the step, back pressed to the post, eyes half shut. Sweat traced from her temple to her ear's rim, stopped at the edge, did not fall. I saw a green fly land on the blanket's edge. It walked a few steps, cleaned its legs, then flew. The blanket's fringe snagged on a wood splinter on the floor, stuck, stretched thin like a tendon. The blanket smelled of body, of road dust, of iron burnt when the wind turned. I remembered the last time such a blanket appeared at the ranch. Wrapped around a dead calf's back when the cold struck sudden. Rafe then had kept silent, as now, hand pressed to his nose bridge, thumb between his brows. "Did someone bring you here?" I asked. The question dropped to the yard. No echo. She opened her eyes, looked at me. No nod, no shake, just glanced past, slipped like water over stone. I saw a small white speck in her eyes. Not fear, not spite, only light driven in. "Under the bed," she said. "A rope, broken." Jonas stepped forward, reached under the wagon bed, pulled out a frayed hemp rope. He tugged. Fibers snapped, dust fell. He looked at Rafe. Rafe did not look back. Rafe pressed his hand to his forehead, hard, like pinning down a thought. He lowered it, looked once more at the brand on her hip. At his eye's corner another line deepened. She rose, slow, took the shirt Rafe had given, slipped it on, not closed tight, buttoned only at the middle. The handkerchief laid on her left hand wrapped, covering the soap crust that clung. The leather strip she did not use. She held the knife, turned it in her palm, checked its dull edge. She slid the knife into the tie at her neck, hid it behind under matted hair. A practiced motion, like tucking away a wooden comb. No rush. No glance at anyone. I dragged a chair off the porch, set it by the wall. She sat, legs drawn, heel against worn plank, said, voice low to not break what hung in the air. If one to call. She pressed lips tight. A crack split blood at the seam. She licked it, narrowed eyes, as if weighing whether to cast away or keep a scrap that remained. Then she said a name, short, no surname. I held it in my head as one holds a smell in storage. So, when needed, open and know which shelf it lies. Rafe lifted the blanket from the step, spread it over the porch rail for sun to strike. The stripes set into uneven bands, between them old white threads mottled. He stroked once along its edge, slow, palm stopping where stitch had slipped. That hand had held hot iron. I saw the old callus ring yellowed across his forefinger's root. No one spoke of the brand. No one spoke of the blind bull. No one asked who did. The yard stayed the yard. The well, the bucket, the tack shed door loose on its hinge, the wagon horse nudging the shaft, the taste of lye still under the tongue, a leather strap unused, a dull knife claimed. I leaned against the post, watched shadows of objects stretch toward the barn, shorten when cloud passed the sun. She set chin on knee, eyes shut, drew air in measured rations like coins counted. Her shoulder trembled once, then stopped. I thought of nights when north wind split bone, men heaved more wood, yet fire would not rise, only glowed, steady, stubborn. That kind of silence, that kind of fire. Jonas came back, stood at the edge of shade, where sun and dark met on ground as a pale line. He pulled a roll, lit it with old ember. Cheap smoke and horse sweat mixed. He looked across the yard, past the drying blanket, past the rusted bucket, past the step where she sat. His lip tilted a little. Not a smile, only like a man noticing a new scratch on a table long scarred. "Night'll be cold," Jonas said. "Wool dries slow." Rafe nodded. Only that. Nothing more. He turned into the shed, his steps lost in the smell of hide and oil. I sat with her, with the knife tucked behind her neck, with the leather strap unused, with the name just heard. The striped blanket still swelled faint in the sun, as if holding someone's breath inside. I watched it long, and knew one thing. From here, it would no longer warm. It had learned a secret, and that secret would hang on the fence, follow us, until the wind quit crossing this yard. We walked the dry creek bed, water left only in pocked pools, brown like weak tea, built behind the tack shed. On the beam hung a row of old branding irons, letters, circles, fire marks once pressed on stock. He reached to the loft, brought down a fire iron with cracked wood handle, iron face greased, cut with the blind bull. His eyes did not meet the shape. He cleared the hearth, dug a pit in the ash, set the iron in, covered it, pressed down with his palm heel. White ash dusted up, clung to his hair and arm, stuck like dried salt. I stood in the door, saw his wrist cords rise. Those cords had tensed when he pressed hot iron to his own stock's hide. Today, that hand buried it, like burying a thing that spoke. The ash sank slow under weight barely there. Jonas stood at the porch, hand on his belt knife, face blank as a stone by the ditch. The blade swayed with his breath, now and then tapped its sheath, clicking faint. The woman stood one step from us, her shadow cast on the lime wall, blotched with smoke. She leaned into the post, eyes on the iron sinking into ash, as if watching an animal crawl into its hole. Her wrist was bound in dirty cloth tight. Hearth dust clung to its edges, gray, no question, no claim. Only breath steady as a man counting steps. Rafe spread another layer of ash, pulled the drawer, placed the stove plate to seal the pit. He laid wood, struck flame. The fire flickered, yellow tongues licked the edge, sounding like someone whispering from the throat. Resin smoke tangled with old tallow, heavy. I heard the horse outside stamp, bit rattling. The sky dropped another layer of heat. Sweat ran down my temple, fell into ash, hissed, gone. No one told the others to go. We went. At the well, the worn rope looped over the shaft, darkened as old belt leather. Rafe set hand to the bucket, turned. Wood groaned. The bucket sank, water struck the stave 3 times, then stilled. Jonas stood off-angled, eyes sweeping the fence line, the dirt road, the bare stretch where dust rose before men showed. The wind carried honeysuckle and the sodium bite of carbolic from the town below. I set hand on the well rim, felt moss cold and slick. As the bucket broke the lip, the woman stepped close behind Rafe. I saw her hand slip between his shirt back and belt, where men keep weight. A quick flick of wrist, leather rasped steel. Colt slid out, heavy and black. She caught the grip, forefinger not on the trigger, laid straight along the frame, as if taught that way before. One notch back on the hammer with her thumb, the striker set light, not aimed, not hidden. The gun lay in her hand as if it had always been. Blink. They swept the circle, counting distance between each of us, counting the gap to the fence. The Colt lowered, pointed to dirt. She stood still, left hand held against belly, covering the brand. Right hand held the gun, waiting. The shift had come without crash, without oath, only the weight of a thing changing owner, and the nerves of the rest adjusting. Rafe steadied the bucket. He drank a small swallow handed to her. She did not drink. He gave it to me. The water tasted of iron and moss, slid down throat like a word, not mine. Jonas did not touch it. He spat his wad at the post base, pressed heel, twisted, then he hitched Rafe's empty holster, cinched it up a notch, like fixing a slipping saddle, his hand quick, no force. No one thanked. The Colt stayed in her hand as we left the well, the rounds not checked, but I heard the hammer fall slow into safe notch as we crossed the rutted road. The sound soft, like hoof to stone, a half note, no warning, no promise. Unease walked with us, in the form of a thing, fitting in a palm. Mrs. Lillian Gray opened the back door before we knocked. The door creaked thin, carbolic rushed out, mingled with pine salve and boiled linen. The room narrow, walls lime-washed, a wooden table beneath the window, on it tray of needles, size 20 thread, small shears, glass bottles with labels, faint. She wore black dress, sleeves rolled, forearms powdered white with talc flecks. Her eyes slid past us without pause, stopped at the burned skin. Her lids blinked once, no more. Jonas tied the horse to a mesquite post, not snug. He tugged once, testing each fiber. Then he pulled his hat low, stood in the fringe of shade under the eaves. I carried the empty bucket into her kitchen, set it under the trough. Soap smell fused with onion burning in some pan ahead. Mrs. Lillian asked no name. She did not ask how came this. She poured carbolic into a porcelain bowl, thinned it with boiled water, steam sharp and clear. She gave a white cloth, gestured. The woman pulled her shirt as far as needed, no more. Mrs. Lillian put on fine glasses, silver chain hanging, studied the edge of the brand, not touching the core. She wiped around, strokes even, like wind over a wheat field, never stopping at a stalk. I stood beside, hand on the needle pouch, saw the tips glint in afternoon light. Rafe,
"Enough," she said soft. Not refusal, only closing a door. The woman lowered her shirt, buttoned one clasp. She did not take the parcel at once. She looked at it like a thing to be needed in the night. Then she tucked it in the borrowed cotton shirt from Rafe. Cloth rasped on cloth, dry sound. Mrs. Lillian opened a drawer, gave an extra roll of bandage, set it in her hand. Her hand warm, cracked, dry. The woman nodded once, barely seen, back straight. We left the way we came. The back door closed, iron lock dropped, no blessing given. Our horse shook its head, white foam at main root. Jonas checked the cinch, pulled it one notch, slapped leather flank twice, quick. He glanced skyward, at cloud rolls thick as cattle dust. No thunder, but the air carried the taste of iron. Night fell, but brought no cool. The graveyard lay on a broken rise, boards for markers leaning with the old wind. A rusted iron cross at the corner, barbed wire coiled round the stake. We led horses between two yucca clumps, where two were tied since earlier, waiting. Their eyes caught the weak flame of the lantern, turned to drops of oil. I stripped saddle, changed cinch. My hands moved from habit, no glance needed. Wind slid through my teeth as I bit down the leather peg. The grave earth smell rose, damp and sweet, unlike the live soil of the fields. Insects struck my shirt mesh, dropped. Rafe held the lamp low, yellow light brushing dry grass, stopping on two names worn down. One who died young, one who died in famine season. He did not read aloud, nor did I. The woman sat on flat stone, loosed her hair tie. Hair fell heavy on her shoulders. She took Jonas's knife from morning, dull, but sharp enough to shear at the nape. She gripped a fist of hair, pulled taut, cut once, then again. The fibers snapped with the sound of paper dried from rain. The hair clumped in her hand, black, dull, sweat-matted, smelling of road dust and Lie's ghost. She said nothing. She offered the bundle to the air, to no one. Jonas stepped near, took it from her. He did not ask, what for? He placed it in his inner pocket, close to heart, like storing a note of debt. His hand straight, light, no motion spare. I saw him blink slow, then gaze to the graveyard fence, where the last barb strand had broken, hanging loose. The wind died. The cricket song cut off for a beat. I set stirrup straight, tightened tie. The woman bound her short hair again, pulled at worn leather. He muttered a small rhythm, no words, only habit to keep his hands from stillness. Above us, a cluster of stars pinned into black, like nails to a plank. The lantern flared, dimmed. I blew. It died. Smoke rising. Kerosene stink. No one spoke of the Colt. Now, it was still in her hand, lowered, near her thigh. The band's knot at her wrist left a dark blot. Wind shifted, carried water scent from cornfields below. An owl passed overhead, wing brushing silence. I heard far off a hoof ring stone, not sure whose. We mounted. Rafe led, never looked back. Jonas rode even, unwilling to take a back. I pressed knees to saddle, let shoulders slack. The woman let her horse keep slow, Colt in outer hand, sweat in her palm, marking faint on steel. The graveyard shrank into night, markers lost, shadows no longer taller than an arm's length. The hair bundle sat in a pocket, meaning to be traded in another night. Now it was evidence. Mute witness. And unease rode our shoulders like a gaunt cat, no sound, no claw, only heavier with each mile. The mills showed first by creak of shaft and the bucket's breath in pipe. The sails dragged, their shadows slicing ground like long blades. The tin tank stained with rust, rim red as wound's mouth. The dirt road barred by a cottonwood pole chained to a post. Deputy Crow leaned there, black glove polished. A folded paper between two fingers, like a church knife. He had not drawn. His back pressed the post, hat brim low, twitching at each turn of the mill sail. Behind him, two horses tied, heads down, tails swishing flies. Beyond them, the herd I heard before I saw, hooves scraping earth, breath snorting. The striped blanket rolled under the lash behind my saddle. Jonas had stuffed it there when leaving the yard, to spare the horse's back, he said. Its fringe stuck out, brushed the saddlebag edge, dust clinging gold as ore chalk. We stopped 5 paces short of the bar. Rafe edged his horse across, not too close. He sat upright as when reading the dead's names. I was on his right, between him and the woman. Jonas flanked out, rose on toes, eyes cutting the barren patch where grass silvered, gauging wind, gauging the line as a farrier measures hoof. His hand already on his knife grip, middle finger tapping sheath in rhythm. Crow spoke without slipping his glove. "Deliver the goods." His voice hollow, tin pipe. The paper flicked faint between his fingers, about to fall, never falling. His gaze paper against the post, one thud, like knocking. He lifted his brim, showing a thin half of brow. Wind pushed the carbolic scent off the woman's shirt front, met the tank's rust reek. I saw her shoulder rise a notch, sink. The Colt still in her hand since the well. Muzzle down, safe. Trigger finger straight on frame, no tremor. The lead bowl struck the fence. The chain groaned like teeth grinding grit. The sails quickened, one extra turn. Water roared harder in the pipe, drummed the tank. Dust whipped small at the yard's edge, rolled under my boot, under hooves, into the bar's shadow, gone. Rafe raised his chin, slight, enough for me to know he heard what we did not. I loosened reins, slack. Jonas stopped tapping. He lifted a shoulder, his neck cord swelled. Across the bar, Crow just lifted the paper off the post, one end still pinned between his fingers. No one said the word stop. But everything stopped. The herd broke the fence on the left first. The outer post split like milk teeth from gum. One beast stamped back, rammed sideways. Earth flew. A voice somewhere barked short, then gone. Crow turned his head a half inch. The rest of him still watched us.
The woman yanked the striped blanket from the saddle lash, one smooth move like pulling a spare rig. Red and blue stripes spread, fringes whipped the wind. She wrapped the blanket round the Colt's barrel twice, tied with its own tassels, pulled tight. Wool against steel rasped dry. The blanket swallowed the gun, ate the flash before it sparked. She bent behind the trough's rim, set barrel to wood edge, grip firm in palm. Her eyes never blinked, mouth shut. One breath in short, out long. Her first shot gave no flare, only a drawn sound, like Earth's chest exhaling. The shell spat but caught in the blanket, rolled half a turn in wool, stuck. She fired again, then again. Each recoil cushioned by wool, like striking turf instead of stone. I smelled singed wool, powder oil, and cow milk souring in dust, turned thick and sharp. Jonas drew his own gun like a man pulling a pick from lock. He fired canted, no aim held, like snapping chestnuts. Each shot dry, clipped, paced the same. He laughed. That laugh dry, short, pinged off metal like coin on a rim glass. It cut through horse screams, one beat, shoved them back like dogs off the porch. Crow no longer leaned. He slid a foot behind, searched for hold. The black glove left the paper at last. Paper fell, soundless. He pulled his gun, slowed and dry for hand. One shell shook loose, dropped, bounced once, stilled. She raised the barrel a hand's width, fired lower, into legs, not chests. The shot bit post, sawdust burst. One man near Crow folded, clutching thigh, grunted, vanished into cattle haze. The herd spun, hooves pounded flat, thick as a drumskin. The lead caught in an old chain, dragged the post, pulled the second fence down. Earth rolled beneath them. A calf skidded, belly first, rose, shook, white-eyed. The windmill's shadow cleaved their backs, blade thin, fast. The tank quaked, water rings struck each other, broke. Jonas swapped his cylinder with a flick. He did not stop laughing. Now the laugh like an oiled hinge, still dry, but flowing. He shot at joints others overlooked. Fence footings, hinges, chain links. Each shot made the world groan, tangle, snap. Sand flew. Wind hummed nonsense. Crow dropped one knee. Gun raised through dust. He fired sideways. Bullet clipped my saddle's edge, tore leather. The seat rasped. My horse jerked. I pulled, reined hard, hand burning from rope bite. I heard a shrill near the ground, not cattle, not grown man. The cry of a throat not broken yet. The woman tilted her head, still firing low. The barrel traced running legs, not chasing, not sparing. The blanket burned at an edge. Flame ate thread, left a black hole rimmed in yellow. She rolled the wrap half-turn, smothered the fire with fresh wool, stuffed more tassel into barrel's throat. The stench turned sweet, like sugar burned long. Her hand blackened further. The dust thinned. The cattle split. Wind dragged smoke over the tank. I saw Crow's face dim behind the haze. He no longer stood. He leaned back on the post, chin to chest, eyes cutting between us. His gun lowered, not by will, as if sitting to keep blood in longer. Smoke slid past us like a curtain. When it broke, I saw the fence post down, one end propped on stone pile, one sunk in ditch. Under it, the errand boy lay pinned, arms clutched around wood as around his belly.
His face streaked dust, eyes wide, whites showing, lips purple. He scraped his heels to push, but shoes soft, nails worn, no grip. A thin cord tied round his left wrist, the knot I'd shown him that afternoon at the post office to keep from dropping his satchel. The woman rose from the trough. The colt lifted in her, closed with the sound of a pebble swallowed. She dropped the gun half an inch, then raised it back a fraction. Eyes unblinking, shoulders steady. Mouth parted, not to speak, to breathe. The boy hissed a thin gasp, wrenched his hand against the beam, nails clawing dirt, calling in a voice without words. Jonas stepped half back, gun still pointed ahead, eyes shifting from her to Crow, then to the boy. He muttered, voice clinging like old stove smoke. Next time, don't spare. No anger, no lesson, only words passing through a mouth that had seen too many things come undone because one hand had softened at the wrong time. Rafe moved one step enough for his shadow to cover her eyes from the sun. He did not touch barrel, did not touch hand. He spoke low, as to a young horse when unhooking it from briar. Where it's filthy, he said, leave it filthy. Each word dropped to the ground, stood still, did not roll. The gun in her hand lowered, did not fall. Lowered, like setting a glass back in its rightful place. Her finger still along the frame, trigger untouched. Her nostrils flared once, then ceased. I heard my heart strike the reins, one beat, then settle even. Crow pushed off the post, his foot slipped. He caught the ground. Dust rose into my nose. He looked past us, brushed the boy, then stopped at the blanket wrapped round the barrel, where the burn hole opened like an eye. His lip tugged one side, not a smile. He dropped his gun, slack, grip touching dirt. After a moment, his lids fell too. I knelt, shoved under the beam, touched the boy's ribs, hot. I told him to breathe short, word by word. Like blowing out a candle in his mind. He did. Rafe slid Jonas's knife into the old lash at the beam's end, twisted half-turn. The rope snapped. The timber lifted a finger's width. Jonas shouldered in, raised. The woman slipped the colt into her belt, knelt across from me, her empty hands sliding under the boy's arms, pulling with his breath. No one counted 3. We lifted. The beam freed his chest, fell aside, dust climbing slow. The boy drew in too long a breath, then coughed. The cough ran through his throat, thin as hemp scraping skin. He gasped. He sat up. He looked at the woman. A look like a wanderer in desert, seeing a dark line of water in a cup. She pulled the handkerchief from her shirt pocket, the one Rafe had given in the forge, corner-stitched faint with a K. She wiped dust from his mouth, his ear, not pressing hard, mouth. The choice was done. No one said right or wrong. On dirt, spent shells lay beside a child's handprint. On her hand, the black of smoke. In Crow's eyes, not regret, not pride, only the windmill's blade's shadow cutting once, thin, painless, but visible. I blinked, the iron taste on tongue dissolving, leaving resin scent from far away. And we stood, listening to wind quiet, until the boy's breathing found rhythm like water dripping to the mill's turn. We drew back into the old tack shed. The hide smell pressed the chest like arms holding. Rafe sat on the step, back to post, shirt torn at the side. A bullet graze, blood not pouring, only soaking slow, spreading like tea on wood. The woman opened the small parcel Mrs. Lillian had given. Needle, thread, gauze, carbolic. Her hands clean in a way not clean. Lies bite, resin fat, sweat dried. She did not ask, "Does it hurt?" She cut cloth, wiped around, spared the edge. Carbolic touched skin. Rafe drew one deep breath, silent. She threaded needle. Fray pinched sharp, slid once through eye. I held the lamp low. Yellow light trembled on the white thread, stilled as she pressed point through flesh. In, out, in. Each stitch spaced by a pinky's width. She drew tight, knotted with 2 turns, teeth clenched. Rafe did not cry. His lips pale, his eyes fixed past my shoulder, where there was nothing, needed nothing. Jonas offered the whiskey bottle. He did not give to Rafe first. He set it on the floor, mouth turned for whoever wanted. Then he drank a short pull, wiped with his hands back, set it in place again. "Thirst," he said, like telling the weather. I turned the bottle. Rafe took, tilted, let it down his throat a short way. She did not drink. She stitched on. The needle vanished deep, shone out the other side, sprouted like a thorn knowing its path. Wind slid under the door, fluttered the gauze edge, breathing like fish. I saw on Rafe's chest, between 2 buttons, a dust mote hung long before falling. Carbolic stench overlaid bloods, pushed it beneath, left it there. She tied the last knot, pressed thread end into skin groove, hid it. She taped gauze, wound once, pulled snug enough it stayed when he breathed. "Done," she said, not to announce, to fasten the day's seam. Jonas lifted the whiskey again, shook the quarter left, listened to liquid slap glass like rain on tin roof. He set it on the shelf, beside old spurs missing 1 rowel. His eyes flicked the stitched wound, no judgment. His hand, weight hidden, yet still cast its shadow on the wall, unwilling to leave. The scar on her hip matched that shadow. Not a stroke missing. She leaned on the stove's ledge, hand on wall, not ash. Rafe stood half-step away, eyes set on the shadow, neither staring nor turning. His lip twitched, as when a man swallows a pill dry. On the table, the handkerchief with K wrinkled. A corner stained resin yellow, lying still as a question already answered. Jonas drew the bundle of hair from his inner pocket. Half dry, road dust mixed with lye from the washing. He lifted it near his nose, not inhaling, just touching smell. Human hair mingled with old ash under his nails, turned sweet and bitter both. He looked across to the bull shadow on the wall, then pushed the hair back down, deep, like tucking an unstruck match into a box. "Leave it," he said to his pocket. The pocket gave no answer. No one spoke of digging the ashes out. We left the weight beneath. Wind turned on the porch, pushed dust through the crack. Dust settled on table edge, on the letter K, on the half-used carbolic bottle. The stove breathed once, faint, like an old man dozing. She sat on the kitchen step, slipped her hand into the wide shirt pocket. Her fingers brushed the bandage pack, the crumpled handkerchief, touched a cloth-bound ledger. She pulled it out. The cover, dark fabric, shone at the corners from sweat. Page edges frayed, bottom lined with salt. She laid it on her lap, did not open at once. She stared at her thigh, the brand beneath cloth, then opened. The first page blank save 2 dried mud streaks. She turned. Each page a column. Date, head count, brand, name. Brush script ran like grass dragged backward by wind. Ink haloed in thick strokes. Jonas crouched, did not touch. He tilted his head, read from side. His eyes moved slow, stopped where ink darkened, as if a hand had lingered too long. He set one finger light on margin, not the words. She turned more, her wrist stiff. Near the end, the proxy column showed. Slanted hand, Kincaid, signed for proxy. Ink blotched, as if written on horseback. Above and below stood names we had no wish to meet again, the numbers straight as fence posts. I stared till the letters dissolved, only black strokes laid over each other. Rafe unmoved. Jonas took the book now with hand. He showed no mark of thought. He flipped pages, thumb tracing like a blade. Then he laughed. The laugh dry, low, short. Paper keeps everyone's blood. Stroked the horse's mane, down neck, stopped a thin hide, over shoulder. He freed the lash, dropped the saddle. It landed softer than its weight. He opened the cylinder, lifted shells one by one, set them in his palm like stones from a creek. 6. He did not throw them. He pocketed them, buttoned. His hands clean of blood, only carbolic and sweat. I knew where he was bound without asking. The town road. Any man could walk blind. Fine dust, ankle high, wagon ruts greased dark. Rafe stepped. First step, not fast, not slow. No one called Rafe. No one tied him. Jonas turned away, did not stop him. He slapped his horse's neck, boot to stirrup, swung up. He flexed wrist, reins taut, horse wheeled. Opposite. He did not look back. He left a thin dust plume, gone. Silence where he had stood, wider than silence with him in it. The woman stood under eaves, hand on pocket where the book pressed. She watched Rafe on the dust road, his shadow stretching, shrinking as clouds crossed. She did not call. She said to me, "No need to follow." I nodded. I stayed, hand on post, wood warm. Rafe walked. Boot heels made holes evenly spaced, each hole a punctuation between unwritten lines. I watched till his back blurred with the far fence. Only a dark dot against sand, then pale. Deputy Crow stood before the office steps. He did not lean as at the mill. He stood straight, hands dropped, black gloves off. His face unwashed, a dust line across cheek like a dull cut. When Rafe mounted the steps, Crow blinked once, as brushing grit from his eye. He reached for cuffs. The metal's hinge opened round, cold, fell through air one circle, then closed. Across the street, Mrs. Lillian, present as she was where blood had been. She spoke not. She held out a small tin of salve, the lid worn, amber grease dried on rim. She placed it in the woman's hand, weight exact to keep it steady. The woman nodded. Lillian drew back, wiped fingers on her black dress, left a sheen. Crow locked cuffs on Rafe's wrists. Steel to skin, sound not loud, but it stayed in the yard long. I leaned to the post, saw 3 people in a broken line. Lillian with the tin just passed, Rafe with cuffs just closed, Crow with the key still warm. None looked long at another. A thin gust lifted the woman's hair off her neck, dropped it back. She clenched the tin, slid it into her pocket. Inside, the book's corner rasped faint. Farther, by the riverbank, where sand darkened damp, Jonas pitched a lean-to with old canvas. He gathered twigs, laid them fish-mouth, stuffed moss. From his pocket he drew the bundle of hair, now dry. He did not linger. He teased strands loose. Dust fell. He set them in the moss like a bird lining a nest. Sparked flame. Hair shrank quick, curled like ants in boiling water, lifted as black smoke thread, not big enough to boil a tin. River past his camp, smelled of mud and rot leaves. Water tapped stone in words no one read. Jonas sat, knife by his knee, blade outward. He began to chop dry corn cake. Above, a diver bird dipped low, studied, left. On the town side, the woman opened the tin, dabbed salve round her bandaged wrist. She did not glance toward the camp. Rafe faced the office door. Crow turned the key, drew it out. The lock, leaving its slot, sounded like a man pulling back a word said too late. I stood between two banks, the office bank, where metal had just touched skin, and the river bank, where hair had just turned to fire. The wind carried a thin smell of old burned wool mixed in. Not from the blanket of the day before, another smell, the smell of burned human hair, short, unmistakable. It passed across me, did not stay. I looked at the ointment tin in her hand, the tin lid glinting a cold dot. I looked at Rafe's wrist under the cuff, skin dark from sun, clean from carbolic, calm as a river's surface before wind. No one said end. This was only the middle of the price to pay. The dusty road out there still remained. The ash pit still held a nameless weight. The notebook in someone's pocket still rubbed against cloth each time that person walked. And on the far bank, Jonas's fire was low, steady, enough to keep a man through the night, with things he did not want to remember, yet could not let go. The sun rose to the peak, not a cloud, on the rough wooden fence. The striped blanket lay hung across like a flag that had lost its meaning. The red-blue stripes dulled under salt and dust. At the edge near the post, a round black burn hole rim pale yellow, like an eye gone out but still open. Wind pulled the tassels apart. The long wool threads quivered like whiskers of a stranded fish. The sound of fabric rubbing on the thorned wood was faint, heavy with human breath. I reset the tilted post. An old nail was driven askew on one side, its head worn down like the teeth of an old man. When I pressed, the blanket sagged a little, then lay still. The scorched wool smell lingered, thin as hair just singed by fire, mixed with the sunburnt smell of wood. The tassels brushed my hand, scratched lightly, left a line of dust clinging as a faint gray streak. The yard was empty, the herd no longer around. The water in the far trough thumped slow to the rhythm of the windmill's veins, now turning weak. The horse rubbed its neck on the post, flicked ears, swatted flies with its tail. Yellow dust lifted from the fence edge, in a thin layer, drifted, came back. No one mentioned the rumble earlier. Stretch, then moved off. The hoofbeats sank into the sandbank behind the barn, faint as falling mist. I stood still a while, hand still on the fabric edge. Sweat ran down the elbow, dropped bead by bead. The blanket once covered a body, then smothered a flash of fire, now hung like some household shirt forgotten. The scorched eyes stared toward the barn, where the kitchen curtains stayed shut, black ash covering a nameless weight. The wind shifted, drew the tassel toward me, tapped my button, like tapping a door that expected no answer. Below, on the crossbeam, a new black mark stuck. Gunpowder dust left behind. I scraped a bit with my nail. The black powder fell like crushed coal, not dissolved, stuck in the skin's groove. I rubbed. It stayed. I let go of the fabric edge. The blanket trembled once, then lay still. The sun moved a handspan past the post's shadow. Tassels stopped jerking. The scorched eye stayed open, unchanged. The errand boy stood at the yard edge, left leg braced on the post, arms holding the reins like cradling a tame snake. He looked to the gate, blinked fast, then looked down at his hand. The woman gripped the rope near the horse's mouth with 2 fingers only. "Watch," she said. One word, horse, flat. He watched. She threaded the rope through the ringed post, looped it back, dropped a bulge. With her thumb, she pressed the bulge, drew the rope's end back into a quick-release knot. "Pull here," she said, touch the knot's tail. Slip. The boy gave a small nod. He tried. His hand shook. The knot did not run. She did not fix it. She stood angled, her shoulder shading his eyes from sun. He tried again. The knot slid. The rope dropped neatly across his hand. A grain of sand clung to his wrist, where another cord had long been tied by habit. He smiled, without sound, then stopped. "Again," she said. He did again, slower, truer. Sweat ran from temple to cheek, drew 2 straight lines. His eyes this time fixed on the rope, not the gate. She tapped his left wrist. "Don't loop the wrist," she said. "Loop the post. Drop when you run." He nodded. This time a sound. Like sand brushing. I stood at the porch edge, back against the post. Her hand was clean of bandage, only black smudge at the tips from wool smoke. She did not wipe. The seam under her sleeve lay flatter than yesterday. The red edge still soundless. His hand still bore the bruise from the rail that had pinned him the day before. The color shifted, from purple to spread yellow. She did not touch it. She only pointed at the notch in the main rope where the old tie had slipped. "Here," she said. He nodded. He kept it. I set the water can at their feet. Neither hurried to drink. The porch roof cast shadow across half the yard, a black line cutting where they stood. The windmill droned steady far off. The story went nowhere. It stayed here, in the clean loops of rope, in the way a slipknot ran true, in how a groan stood a little angle to block the sun for the child, without words. The carbolic smell had faded from her shirt, replaced by new sweat. On her pocket, the corner of the notebook struck fabric each time she bent, gave a sht, short, even. "Again," she said. He did. Then he pulled at the tail of the knot. The rope slid clean. He glanced at me as if to ask if anyone saw. I did not nod. I did not turn away either. He tied it back. Correct. She did not praise. She gave him her unbandaged hand for a light tap. Hand met hand. Soft sound. Done. He pressed the reins to his chest heaving. She turned, stepped into the shade of the porch. We did not follow with our eyes. On the fence the blanket still hung. The burned eye no longer glared. The wind had shifted. The frayed tassels hung down, unmoving. I stopped counting. Only heard the breath. Light, steady, like wind passing through the throat of what had survived. The saloon was darker than usual. The sun was still outside the street, but the wood inside had drunk light for years, now giving back layers of dim. On the wall, higher than an arm's reach, old branding iron hung from 2 black hooks. The blind bull shape lay sideways, cold as a bar of iron left on a grave. Smoke from the stove never reached that high. Dust did. Dust clung to the curved edge, dulling the steel one shade. Rafe sat with his back to the door, his back straight, not stiff. The bandage at his hip clean, the seam beneath the cloth flat as a washed gully after rain. The glass before him half full. He had not touched it. His left hand on the table, knuckles lined like stones set on a field's edge. I poured more into that glass. The liquor touched the rim, rang a faint ting almost unheard. He did not say enough. I stopped at the right mark. The door opened, wind slid through floorboard gaps, carrying the dry smell of road dust and the far scent of river water. A man stepped in. Spurs struck 3 beats. Jonas. He did not remove his hat. Breath. I looked up at the wall. The iron gleamed where the hook rubbed. I heard the back door tap the wall, wind shift. Dust on the table, slid an arm's length, settled near me. Jonas's glass was empty. I set a new one. He did not nod. I poured. He raised the glass, rim touched his lip, drank short, set it back on the old ring mark. Old circle met new circle, became a darker ring. No one asked, where from? That question was not needed. Jonas dragged a scrapwood chair, heavy sound, not sharp. He sat askew, shoulder brushing no one. The dagger on his hip, hilt turned out, still bore that split down its length. He set both hands on the table, thumb swept dust aside in one stroke. Beneath was an old scar. Someone had driven a blade here before, turned it once, left a round hollow like an eye socket. I set my finger in it. Cold. The woman stood at the lamp's edge, back to a post, short hair at her nape, thin blouse fastened with 3 buttons, the corner of a notebook still showing at her pocket. She did not step farther in. She looked at the wall for a second, then down at her hand. Her hand spun the tin lid of a salve box, opened, closed, without applying. Lid clicked, tick, softly, even. She slid the box back in her pocket, stood still. I poured a glass of water, set it on the counter. She shook her head. I left it. Cold water sweated down the glass, ran into a wet line. On the wall, the branding iron stared like an iron eye, unblinking. Under the table, a drop of liquor slid from a rim, made a black dot on the floor. I wiped. Cloth dragged the dot, left a pale streak. Wind slid through like water past shallow banks. Wind hissed through the crack of the door like someone pulling rope from a slip knot. No one touched the knot. None needed. Crow did not enter the saloon tonight. Mrs. Lillian did not cross this door at this hour. The street outside moved, then paused, then moved again. Shadows passed across the doorway like strips of dark, broken by dust on glass. I looked at Rafe's hand. It did not close, did not open, only lay there, forefinger rubbing wood grain, slow, as if rewriting a forgotten letter. Jonas watched the line a moment, snorted once, short, without meaning clear. He pushed the burnt hair bundle an inch deeper into the light. The lamp caught one strand unburned. It flared red-brown like wire heated, then dimmed. I poured for myself. Liquor slid my throat. Not hot. I heard the saloon's back before they called for whiskey. As for us, tonight, we only listened to wind pass, like water through shallow banks. In the end, only the striped blanket hung on the fence. It had once covered a body, once swallowed flame, now still as a dead eye. There are things we hide, things we use to survive, then things we hang up to remind ourselves not to forget. Rafe walked himself in. The boy learned the slip knot. Mrs. Lillian set the box in a hand that did not shake. Healing is not loud, only needle through skin, breath finding its rhythm back, and one who knows where to stop. If the story still catches anywhere, leave a line. What do you see in the burned hole on the blanket? A place once hidden, or a place no longer covering? I will read it, slow, like hearing wind cross the yard, and let it pass, like water through shallow banks.